What is going on, Devils fans? Yes, I'm in a little bit of a different studio here today. I guess, tropical, as you could say. Got a lot of cool stuff behind me. But what is going on, Devils fans? It is, as always, your host, your best friend, and your confidant, as well as your number one source, Neil Villapiano. And welcome to episode 30 of season 5 of the Devil's State of Mind podcast, right here on the Hockey Podcast Network, as well as Sports Wire Radio, the best place to get everything you need to know about your New Jersey Devils. And as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check this episode out and everything that I do here at Devil's State of Mind. You guys know that I greatly appreciate it. And just last week, Devil's State of Mind was in the top 75 most listened to hockey podcasts in the United States. So thank you guys, as always, for your continued support. It means the world to me. Let's continue to get this podcast going more and more and more. I'm excited for the off season. I'm excited to continue to improve and build, with Devil's State of Mind. I'm super excited for what the future holds. Again, as always, I just want to say thank you guys. Shout out, as always, to our lovely sponsors down below. Obviously, you got SeatGeek. Use my promo code Devil's State of Mind. Get $20 off your first purchase. As always, make sure to use our promo code THPN at DraftKings, and you bet $5, you get $200 instantly in free bets. And guys, you got the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals coming up at the end of this week. I know it sucks without hockey going on right now, but it will be back very, very quickly. And also, of course, you got Major League Baseball and so many other sports. So you know that DraftKings is your number one place to get in on all the huge cash prizes. Just make sure you use our promo code THPN. Bet $5, you get $200 instantly in free bets. And last but certainly not least, shout out to Horns of Tail Napa Valley, the official wine club of the New Jersey Devils, and also the official wine sponsor of the Devil's State of Mind podcast. And use my promo code Devil's State at checkout to get 10% off all of your orders of some really awesome Devils themed wine. It is the perfect gift for the Devils fan in your life. So as always, shout out to all of our sponsors. Devils fans, we have another very special guest joining us on this edition of the Devil's State of Mind podcast. This episode is going to be focusing mainly on the Devils' ECHL affiliate, the Adirondack Thunder. In the last episode, just about exactly a week ago, a little bit more by the time you're listening to this, I talked about how the Adirondack Thunder were going to be playing Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Florida Everblades at home, hoping to come back from down 3-1. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be, as their season did come to an end in that Game 6. So their season is officially over. And currently, the ECHL Finals, or the Kelly Cup, is currently going on right now. But to give us a better and deeper perspective of the Adirondack Thunder, not just in these playoffs, but the season as a whole, because this was without question the greatest season in Adirondack Thunder history, I am joined by a good friend of mine who is the senior editor for Inside the Ring, covering the Adirondack Thunder. It is with great pleasure that we welcome on my good friend, Armand Klisivitch. Armand, welcome to the Devil's State of Mind podcast, your first time on the podcast, and you are currently in Florida covering the Kelly Cup Finals, but nonetheless, how are you doing today, my friend?
Good. Thanks a lot for having me on. Just the whole year's been an honor. From covering the Thunder and the opportunity that Connor Green's given me once again to cover my second straight Kelly Cup Finals down here in Florida. And you can't complain when you can mix hockey and the beach.
Absolutely. And the Thunder were obviously the beneficiaries of a little bit of that in the Eastern Conference Finals when they were taking on the aforementioned Florida Everblades. So let's kind of jump right into it, Armand, and we'll start with simply this. The Adirondack Thunder, when not too long ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, they really were kind of at the bottom of the ECHL and really struggling. And to go from where they were a few years ago to this year where they were absolutely dominant, they had a tremendous run in the postseason, going all the way to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals before their run ended. Talk to us a little bit about, from your perspective, because obviously you were covering the team, what this whole season meant to not just the organization, but the fans as well up in Adirondack.
No, every night the team talks about it. It's the smallest market in the ECHL, but it really doesn't feel like the smallest market in the ECHL. It's not only just the way the fans are during the game, it's just the way the team connects with the community outside. After the last game of the year, after game 6, fans were outside waiting for players to bang it for the season. It's just unbelievable how incredible this fan base here is in Adirondack. And it just proves that, it may be a small market, but it just proves how much people care about this team and how the ECHL really is one of those leagues that really are undercovered.
Yeah, and I think and I've spent a lot of time talking about the Devils AHL affiliate, the Utica Comets. You and I have obviously been on shows in the past talking about the Devils and the Thunder and obviously the Comets. And I think that Devils fans don't always know what's going on in the minor leagues, especially all the way down in the ECHL. So I kind of want you to give my listeners and viewers here on YouTube as well kind of a perspective of what the ECHL is all about, what they stand for and really their main purpose in terms of working with the NHL.
The big thing is like you mentioned, Neil. Everybody knows about the AHL because you've got the big name prospects, but the ECHL is just another level. It may be below the AHL, but it really gives these teams another place to put their prospects. I mean, you look at a team like Carolina last year. They didn't have an AHL affiliate, and they had to rush to get a partnership with Carolina, and then they had for Norfolk, and then they also had an agreement with Manitoba and Winnipeg too. So it really proves that a lot of these teams, need an ECHL affiliate. I mean, look at Kansas City, a team that's in the finals against Florida with a new expansion team like the Seattle Kraken. It really just proves how much these teams really mean to these NHL organizations.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for when you look at the New Jersey Devils organization, I think it's great that they not only have an AHL affiliate, but they do have an ECHL affiliate, and they try to make the organization as a whole as strong as possible and to give a lot of players a multitude of different opportunities to play professional hockey and work their way up into playing in the NHL. And there have been a lot of players over the years that have gone from playing in the ECHL to having long stays in the National Hockey League. So it's not just in junior hockey and the NCAAs and even playing overseas, but there are, leagues like the ECHL that give players just another avenue in terms of playing professional hockey. So the next question that I have for you, Armand, is this: what type of overall environment and atmosphere is it like in Adirondack, and how much do the Thunder mean to this entire community up in Adirondack?
Oh, they mean everything to the community. It's just unbelievable. This team, it was the longest playoff run they've had in team history. And you could just feel it. They were down 4-1 in going to late in the third period. They had 2 quick goals. And boy, when they got within one, that place was going nuts. And it's unbelievable. And it's not even when this team is playing well. This team is also behind them when they're struggling. The fans are still coming out. I remember a couple of years ago when this team, like you mentioned, was one of the worst teams in the ECHL. Those Wednesday nights there was very slim crowds. But this year it was, even for a Wednesday night game, they were packing in 3,000 fans in a place that seats a little over 5.
Yeah, and I remember when, a couple of years ago when I first started kind of giving updates to fans about the Adirondack Thunder. I mean, there were nights where it was tough to tell people the scores of games and how much the Thunder were, excuse my language, getting their, asses handed to them. But to go from that to where they were this past year is truly phenomenal. And to give you guys, our listeners and viewers here a perspective, again, the Adirondack Thunder finished the regular season at an astounding 43-18 7-4. They kind of do overtime loss and shootout losses, 2 separate things. 97 points, good for first place overall in the Eastern Conference, 4 points ahead of the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, and they finished the year in 4th place overall in the league. And I think that was pretty remarkable what they were able to do throughout the entirety of it. And then they had a really, really strong playoff year going the way the Eastern Conference Finals. Armand, can you talk to us a little bit about just what was the Thunder's run in these playoffs?
It was just incredible, and when you look at the Thunder's run the playoffs, you got to look at Isaac Poulter. A guy who really shouldn't have been in this league. He spent most of the year in Utica, and he played very well in Utica. And it was just one of those things where the end of the year, the Devils are finally getting all their goaltenders healthy, and Poulter came down here, and he showed why he's an AHL goaltender. Four shutouts. Um, Tied Cam Johnson's record for most shutouts in a playoff series from last year. And when you look at Poulter, he's just one of those guys, and you understand why the Devils signed him to an entry level deal this year. You understand why he had the number one spot in Utica at times this year, and he's a guy who I think you look at Devils, and I know you're going to look at a guy like Jake Allen and moving forward, but a couple years down the road, the Devils really have something here with Isaac Poulter, and at one point they're going to have to give this kid a look.
Yeah, for sure. And again, just like a lot of people, especially over on Twitter, I was able to kind of keep my eye and be able to watch Isaac Poulter. And Devils fans will remember there was one point where he was the backup for the Devils, and that was for a brief stint. Didn't play in a game, but he was there. And then obviously the Devils were able to sign him to an entry level deal. And the way that I look at it, Armand, and I'm sure you kind of feel the same way, is that even for a guy who gets signed to an entry level deal and is playing in ECHL, that right there shows the belief and the confidence that the organization has in somebody like him that maybe, as you mentioned, down the road could very well become something. And the Devils do have a bunch of young goaltenders that they are keeping their tabs on. Obviously, Nico Dawes and Akira Schmidt are the first two guys that come to mind, although that there are some questions about, especially with Akira Schmidt, maybe he's not going to be here next year, depending on certain trades that might happen. You obviously have Brennan, who has been playing for a bit, as well as a young Jakob Malik got signed to an entry-level contract. But again, so did Isaac Poulter. And, talk to us a little bit more about why you feel that Isaac Poulter had so much success, especially in this play, breaking that record, or tying that record, like you said, for shutouts, and just having the huge amount of success that he had this year.
I think if you look at Poulter, the year before he had his time in Adirondack, and he also, he saw some time in Utica too. And I think just being able to get to be in Utica full time, get his feet under himself, not have to worry about being sent up and down every other weekend. I think the fact that he was there in Utica, with the goaltending coach, I think it really helped him. And like you said, another kid like Tyler Brennan, that's one of the guys who really suffered with injuries this year. But when he was on, he's another really strong prospect for the Devils, and it's just amazing that we every year the Devils goaltending is always the topic of discussion. And you look at two guys like Poulter and Brennan. Maybe Brennan's a little further back, but I think Poulter in another 2 or 3 years it could see himself in a Devils uniform for sure. And you can't just look at the goaltenders here, Neil. You look at a guy like Philip Ngars, a guy like Timur Bragimov. Two guys who really played well, during the regular season for the Thunder. And it's just to me, and another guy who I think is really going to be a guy to keep your eye on next year. I think Andre Gontus, a guy at Adirondack, signed out of college, played great right out the gate, got a call up to Utica. I think he's obviously going to get an AHL deal, this summer. But I really think it's good. You're going to see a lot more movement next year, like you've been seeing like this year between Utica and Adirondack, and I think some of these guys are really going to make an impact. I mean, look at a guy like Xavier Perrant, who was here 2 years ago. He went up and he never came back.
Right.
You look at Colin Felix and Will McKinnon, two guys who really never got their shot in the Flyers organization, now are getting their shot, here in the Devils organization, and they both spent a majority of the year up in Utica.
For sure, and I think one thing to keep, to have more or less not necessarily to keep, but to give, Devils fans more perspective is that the Devils use a lot of analytics. It was talked about a lot, especially when the Devils hired Sheldon Keefe as their head coach, which, by the way, if you haven't checked that episode, I posted that one last week talking about Sheldon Keefe's hiring. I would recommend you go check that out if you haven't already. And I could definitely tell that there are a lot of moves that the Devils look at in terms of, even acquisitions for their AHL affiliate or obviously with the Adirondack Thunder that maybe are not ones that you would say, oh, that makes like perfect sense, but more of just a guy that, from an analytic perspective, if developed correctly, could very well, be something. You mentioned Timur Ibrahimov, and now the thing about him that people forget is that he was part of the Timo Meyer trade. He was one of like the 30,000 players that were involved in the Timo Meyer deal the previous season, but he actually did have a very, very solid year. There's some other guys that really kind of stand out to me. Matt Stife in 70 games this year, 4 goals, 31 assists for 35 points, without question, the Thunder's best defenseman. The one guy, though, Armand, that has been talked about for the last couple of years and had himself another really good season is Shane Harper, number 11 on the Thunder, 19 goals, 37 assists for 56 points in 56 games played. He had dealt with an injury earlier in the year and still finished just 1 point behind Tristan Ashbrook for the leader in points this season. Talk to us about Shane Harper a little bit more. I want to know more about him because he seems like a guy that maybe could potentially be something down the road.
You look at a guy like Shane Harper, a guy who, this year plays 800th game, pro game, can't say enough about him. A guy who at the beginning of the year wasn't sure if he was going to call it a career or if he was going to come back for one more year, comes back, like you said, was almost a point per game player for the Thunder. And when you really look at the Adirondack Thunder and a face behind this franchise, you got to look at Shane Harper, a guy who was here when it was the Adirondack Phantoms. A guy, and talking to Harper, it looks like this may be the end of his career here. He hasn't announced anything officially yet, but that seems to be the way it's leaning right now. But he's been a guy who's really been a solid piece for Adirondack. And you look at a guy like Matt Steve. I think one thing when you look at the Kelly Cup playoff run that the Adirondack Thunder had this year, one question I think a lot of people are going to always look back at is why wasn't Matt Steve playing a lot more games in the Kelly Cup playoffs? Then that's one thing I always looked at. You look at a guy like Matt Steve, he was your offense. Adirondack couldn't get much going from the blue line this year, and you have a guy like Matt Steve, and maybe he didn't have his best games, but I think I think he should have had a couple more games in the Kelly Cup playoffs this year, just knowing how Thunder were and knowing they need some protection from the blue line. You look at a team like Florida, their blue line has come alive this postseason, and you see where that's got them.
Yeah, there's a lot of really intriguing names because there seems to be a lot of opportunity and a lot more where the roster is not always going to really be the same, especially in the minor leagues, because you never know when guys are going to go up or going to go down. And Armand and I can joke about this now, but it wasn't that long ago when the Devils had freaking 8 goaltenders playing in one season, where it felt like every other day the Adirondack Thunder were struggling to have a goaltender for more than 5 minutes because the Devils had to keep moving guys, whether it was from Adirondack to Utica or Utica to New Jersey. And, again, you never know what could happen if you just perform well enough. And I know that Kevin Dineen has praised the Adirondack Thunder in the past in terms of having guys, when they come to Utica, be kind of prepared to make that next step and to jump in. And, it would be nice if Shane Harper could continue his career, especially with the success that he's had overall, but he's played a long time, in professional hockey, like you mentioned, well over 800 games at this point. And there obviously is some questions about, his future of playing professional hockey. It's funny we talk about players retiring. Longtime NHLer Joe Pavelski, it looks like he is planning on retiring from the National Hockey League after 18 seasons in the NHL. So, if it is made official, a pre-congratulations to Captain America Joe Pavelski on a great career. Now,
and like you said, Neil,
go ahead.
if you look at Toronto, bring with Sheldon Keefe, one thing that Toronto has always been known for is having a very, very strong ECHL system. You look at the Newfoundland Growlers a couple of years ago, they were a team that was highly dependent on AHL players and was a team that was always in the Kelly Cup playoffs, a team that was always in the Kelly Cup finals. And I think when you look at a guy like Sheldon Keefe, I think, you've got to have that in the back of your mind. Newfoundland had a great ECHL team. Adirondack had a great year last year. Head coach Pete McArthur has done everything he can, when guys go down, it's everybody who's coming to come in has stepped up, whether it's been via trade or via a guy coming out of college. It's worked out for them. So I think the hiring of Keefe is also going to trickle down to the Adirondack Thunder, and maybe you'll see kind of like the same kind of thing that you saw with Newfoundland, is a lot more AHL guys being on the Thunder roster next year.
It's funny that you bring up Pete MacArthur, because I was actually going to ask you about, your thoughts on him. This was just his second season at the helm here for Adirondack and having the year that he did. Talk to us a little bit about, who he is as a coach and, what he brings to this Adirondack Thunder team.
You look at a guy like Pete MacArthur. He's a guy who's been in the Adirondack Thunder organization for a while. He was a captain with the team before he became a coach. And he's a guy who I think really kind of knows how to push these guys. He knows the organization. He knows what the fans are looking for. And when you have somebody who the fans can connect to like that, I think it just adds another element, especially in a league like the ECHL where everybody's so tight. It's such a tight-knit community to have a guy who, hey, this was our captain. And, I think it just really helps. You look at the Allen Americans, that didn't go as well as they would have thought, with Jack Costello getting fired, earlier this week. But I really think you're really starting to see a lot more players kind of take that jump into ECHL head coaching jobs. You saw it with James Henry do it with Reading, Terrence Wallen did it in Maine. I think, you saw it with Jordan LaValle Smotherman do it with Worcester before he decided to go overseas to Austria. But I think it's just, you have a guy like Pete MacArthur and you have a guy like Mike Burgeon who came over from Skidmore, where that school had a great year, and to have somebody who had some coaching experience to help out a guy like MacArthur, I think those two have really been great. And MacArthur has praised Burgeon every chance he gets for his job he does.
For sure. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he continues to, develop this team moving forward. And that kind of brings me to my second to last question for you, Armand, is, it's funny that we're doing this now because literally today, the schedule for next season was already put out for the Thunder. My question to you is this: what should be, because again, the roster can always change depending on certain things, no matter what should be the expectation from the Adirondack as an organization and the fans themselves going into the 2024-25 season?
I don't think there's any doubt that they can get back to where they were, possibly get into a cup final next year. I mean, Pete MacArthur said he's looking at bringing a lot of the core back from this year. I mean, obviously you're gonna lose. You lose Patrick Rasso, which is gonna be a huge loss as he went overseas to Austria to join the same team that Jordan LaValle Smotherman is gonna be coaching. You're gonna lose Harper, so that's gonna leave two big holes for Adirondack. I mean, I think they're gonna be fine in net. You look at it, you look at this year, Poultry will probably be up, but that won't be an issue. You have a healthy Vinny Papura, who was fantastic this year. I think one of the unspoken stories of all year, his numbers were just unreal when he was in net, and to cap it off with a guy like Jeremy Berder as a 1B, the goaltending in Adirondack this year was just unbelievable. It was like, no matter who you had, and, Brendan, struggled at times, and, he had his injuries, but, it really, I think, once Brendan can really find his footing and stay healthy, I think that's going to be another solid piece to Adirondack going into next year.
And obviously,
Adirondack's got a lot. The schedule next year for Adirondack looks a lot different than it did this year. Heading into next season, Adirondack will play 15 out-of-division games, opposed to 9 from this past season. But 6 of those 9 games out of division this past season were against Florida, so another team they saw. But Adirondack goes out to Tahoe, which should be very exciting.
Right.
They see Cincinnati, Kalamazoo, Wheeling makes the jump from the Central to the North. So I really think Adirondack's poised for to be a top team in the North Division again next year. And there's really unless they lose a ton of guys going overseas, but then again the Devils system is so deep. You're gonna see guys trickle down that are gonna sign AHL deals and end up in Glens Falls.
And it'll also be really interesting to see who the Devils take in the NHL draft this upcoming year. Maybe some guys that maybe next year or even the year after could potentially be with the Adirondack Thunder. So the Devils continue to just add to what is a very, very strong prospect pool. And it's really exciting to see. I think overall, I can say for myself, who was able to, watch a lot of the games, especially during the playoffs, it's a really, really exciting environment up in Adirondack, just like it is up in Utica as well. I definitely am going to try to make an effort to go up to a game and get an opportunity to go up there and check it
Oh,
out
it's
myself.
unreal. It's something else to be there in person.
And I'm definitely looking forward to it as well. So, Armand, my last question to you, my friend, and again, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, is this. What is the one message you would want to leave the Adirondack Thunder fans after this season and looking ahead to the future?
It's just a start. You know, you look at where Pete McArthur has brought this team. A massive second half run in his first year as head coach. They played a tough Newfoundland team, and where they lost it in 5 games. And this year, they take that lot, everything they learned from that year, bring it into this year, make it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, take Florida to defending back-to-back champions to 6 games. I don't think anybody can really be upset about this year. And I think you just got Florida's a good team, so there's really nothing to be disappointed about. And I think Predator fans are really excited about next year.
And I think all of us, even here in New Jersey, are very much excited and interested to see how next season goes. And like Armand mentioned, it's just the start. And I think that the Adirondack Thunder are building something very, very special. And certainly after talking with Armand here, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. Armand, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and your busy schedule, obviously covering the Kelly Cup, to jump on here. Before I let you go, I would like to roll out the red carpet and allow my listeners and viewers to get to know you a little bit more and really just tell us where they could check you out on social as well as anywhere else you put out your great content. So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, check out Inside the Rink. We have some big things coming in the next couple months to the website. You can follow me at a Klisivitch on Twitter, Armand Klisivitch on Facebook. But yeah, basically everything, all my stuff will go. All my articles are on my Twitter page. Inside the Rink, our ECHL team has grown last year. We now have photographers. We have almost the entire East covered. Our goal this offseason is to get the West covered, but there are a lot of big things ECHL wise, NHL wise, and AHL wise coming up at Inside the Ring. So make sure to check it out.
And check out all that stuff for sure. Armand, again, thank you so much for your time today. We will definitely have you back on the podcast, maybe for a 2024-25 season preview, and that'll be obviously a while from now. But again, thank you so much, and enjoy your time down in South Florida covering the Kelly Cup, my friend.
Thanks a lot for having me.